What's happening, friends? It's a live edition of Syracuse Sports. We have called together the football squad. Yes, football. Here in January, Indiana is your college football national champion. So as Syracuse continues its quest to improve from a 3-9 season in 2024, the dust has settled on the transfer portal. So we are here to see just how Fran Brown and company did on that. We appreciate you joining us here. It's all presented by Krause Health, the exclusive healthcare partner for Syracuse Athletics. You got Brent Axe, you got Chris Carlson, you got Javon Edmonds. Gentlemen, great to see you. We made it through portal season. Now, technically, they still can add players from the portal, but if you want that to be the case, you had have your name in there by Friday. Things have settled down to a reasonable pace now in the transfer portal. How are you, gentlemen?
Good. I don't know. So we hope that's true, right?
Maybe I shouldn't jinx it. Knock on wood.
As Darian Mensah and others are proven, there are very few sure things, but slowing down at least for sure.
The biggest thing. Go ahead, Javon.
Oh no, I would say I'm just happy. Neither of you grew any more gray hairs during this portal season. You know, it's very stressful. You know, Uncle Brent's still at Uncle Brent's stage and not Grandpa Brent yet. So clearly we did something right this last month, I guess.
I found a few more grays right up here this morning, so maybe we're a little closer to Grandpa than Uncle at this point. But it was an active portal season for Syracuse. They went into this with a lot of positions. We were wondering how aggressive they would be, and we're going to cover it all here. But gentlemen, the lead story was certainly the quarterback position. After what we saw last year, a disintegration at the quarterback position. Steve Angeli goes down. Ricky Collins just could not get out there and hold the job as QB1 once he was put in there. He once was anointed QB1 out of the spring. They brought in Angeli. We know the story by now. Ricky Collins just struggled at that position. They had to go down to Joe Filardi, the lacrosse walk-on. Luke Carney kind of got a cameo appearance at the quarterback position, only 7 passing attempts. What we saw was essentially a worst-case scenario put in front of us, the fallout scenario. So Fran Brown noted before the portal opened towards the end of the season that he wanted to get 2 quarterbacks. But why have 2 when you can get 3? So Syracuse ends up with Malachi Nelson. This is his 4th stop. UTEP, Boise State, USC, now Syracuse. Amari Odom from Kennesaw State. And Danny Lauder from Georgetown. Now, last year, guys, they went into the season with their quarterbacks having attempted 87 passes in a college football game, right? This year, they will go in with their quarterbacks having attempted 1,394 passes in a real college football game. So that's what jumps out to me. And Javon, I'll start with you. The experience is there. The production is there. If Syracuse does have to go down the line again at the quarterback position, no matter who steps on the field from the names we just mentioned there, they've been on a college football field before. That's a bonus because the guys they had to put out there last year didn't have much experience.
The difference this year between last year is going to be iron sharpening iron. You've got these many guys that have played. Angeli's going to be your guy at number 1, but he's going to have to consistently look over his shoulder. Mm-hmm. But everything after that, it is a wide open race for QB2 every week of this offseason. So you're going to have guys out there pushing each other to play their best football and improving each week of the offseason in a way that they couldn't last year. Like, who was pushing Ricky Collins to be a better quarterback before Steve Angeli arrived? And who was pushing Michael Johnson to be a better quarterback? You didn't have any. Now you got Danny Lauder, experience. You got Amari Odom, experience. You got Malachi Nelson, who things haven't gone well for him, but at one point, you know, everyone swore he was going to be the next Caleb Williams. So you've got all these guys who have played and know exactly what they're doing. They're going to make each other better more than any coach, you know, whether it's Jeff Nixon or Sean Ryan ever can, just from the fact of, I'm always looking over my shoulder. I've got to bring it every day.
You noted Sean Ryan there, by the way, the new quarterbacks coach for Syracuse. Of course, Nunzio Campanelli has moved on. He's now the offensive coordinator at UConn, two-time Super Bowl champion with the Giants. He's worked with a bunch of Pro Bowlers, and now he gets to work with a lot of experience, Chris. As you saw the quarterbacks come in here, and this was the question we all had. Who do you convince to come into Syracuse knowing that Angeli is the starter, right? So you're digging deeper into the quarterback pool. If you're talking to somebody who wants to be QB1, well, you can tell that person, and Malachi Nelson's statement from, I believe Pete Thamel tweeted this, that he's coming in to compete to be the starter. Certainly you can tell him that, but we all know that Angeli, short of his rehab doesn't go well or something happens, is QB1. So that was a challenge for Fran Brown, and it looks like he did pretty well considering that was hanging over no matter what quarterback they approached to come in here and compete to be either 1A or, as Javon noted, a heck of a backup quarterback battle is going to be happening here starting in the spring.
I think it's interesting that you guys are anointing Angeli. Like Amari.
I'm just going by what Fran said. Fran said he's QB1, right? Yeah, that's all they could beat him out. There's no question about that. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think Amari Odom leaves a starting job to come to Syracuse without at least some belief that it's going to be a fair and open competition. Now, like you guys, I expect we're in a situation where Angeli gets the tiebreaker. You know, if it's not a clear and decisive win for Odom, Angeli's the starter because of, you know, all the leadership qualities and what he meant. But I don't think Odom leaves a starting FBS job to take a backup job at Syracuse. I think he has, he probably expects a real chance to compete. And he's good. They won 8 more games with him as quarterback. Kennesaw State did than they did the previous year. That is a big quarterback stat. You know, they were in their second year as an FBS program, and they won a league title. That is a quarterback that makes you better. So I actually think the closer battle to me is Angeli and Odom versus, you know, the 2-3. Malachi Nelson lost the job at UTEP. I don't think he's coming in to be your backup quarterback at Syracuse.
The interesting thing there is, of course, at the end of spring ball last year, Ricky Collins was anointed the starter, and now he was the best in that room, but he had the thumb injury right at the end of spring. You had a spring portal window, which we should remind people that don't know. There's no spring portal window this year. This was it. You had one window, January 2nd to the 16th. You've got your team in terms of bringing in people from the portal. There's no second chance at that. And Jelly, of course, is recovering from an injury. And look, Fran Brown said that 3 months ago. A lot can change in 3 months. If his rehab doesn't go the way it is, if he does get beat out, you had to create more competition in that room. If Amari Odom comes in, and Odom's 6'4", 205, he threw for 2,594 yards, 65% passer, 26 touchdowns, just 8 interceptions. They won Conference USA. I mean, all of these guys have to take a step up one way or the other. And that seemed to be a theme for a lot of the players that Syracuse got out of the portal, as we're going to discuss here. That could happen, right? I think Chris makes a good point that Angeli gets a lot of tiebreakers, and there's a lot of things that he is going to have to reaffirm through his rehab process. But ultimately, against New Hampshire to start the season, I think Steve Angeli's out there as the starting quarterback, but it's not this. I wrote it in my column on syracuse.com about this. All these guys, one of them is going to have to run the show until Steve gets back. And Javon, they might not be ready to hand the keys back when Steve trots out to practice if he's ready to go at the start of training camp in early August. Be like, no, man, you got to get this back from me.
I mean, there is the possibility it's an Achilles injury, right? That's 6 to 12 months. There's a possibility that he's not even in the conversation to play against New Hampshire. Odom goes out there, does his thing against an FCS team, which he should be able to do. All conference selection down there at Kennesaw State. Big reason why Jerry Mack was coach of the year in that conference. He win the conference. You know, I had to give strong consideration into giving the Owls a top 25 vote last night for the final ballot of the year. But Conference USA's level of competition, whole different conversation. But still, there is a chance that Odom's out there for the first 2-3 weeks of the season.
There's a lot less pressure on him, right? There's a difference between when Tennessee is your first game and when New Hampshire's your first game. That takes a lot of pressure off the coaching staff, too. Yeah.
So, if he goes out there and he does his thing for the first 2 games of the season, and he balls out against a UConn, which I think is going to be the third game this year or second, one of them. Then this conversation again of, hey, Steve, we're rolling with Amari. Like, we're hot. Got to go with him until that's not the case anymore, right? So I think it would be malpractice not for this to be a true competition. But as you said, Brent, Fran's words are Fran's words, and until further notice, his plans are for Steve Angeli to be QB1.
So all told, they were more aggressive in the portal at that position than I thought they would be. I thought they got 2 and they'd settle on that, but they certainly did not. And, we don't get a look at the NIL contracts or anything, but you got to make an investment there. I mean, you made a big investment in Ricky Collins. I'd be curious to see how the money was dispersed there and how you convinced 3 quarterbacks to come in. And we haven't talked about Danny Lauder. We should give him a shout out here from Georgetown. He's going to elevate from the FCS level up here to the ACC. 6'3", 220. He played in 3 games for Georgetown last year. The year before that, he started 10 games, so he's got some experience. Last year, threw for 613 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 1 pick in those 3 games. The year prior to that, completed 177 of 288, 61% with 11 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Chris kind of feels like a safety valve, an experienced safety valve, somebody that fits what Jeff Nixon's system is and is just ready and willing to be there if needed. But I don't see him seriously in the competition to be out there at any point next year. He's free to prove me wrong, but I think it's a big leap for somebody to make, even an experienced player like him. He's a senior coming in.
Yeah, I liked what they did sort of deeper down. With Malachi Nelson, you have a guy who obviously has physical tools, just like Ricky Collins, but like threw a lot of interceptions and didn't look like he got quarterback. But you bring in a guy with physical tools. In Danny Lauder, it seems like you're bringing in more of like a game manager type who has played a lot of football, but probably doesn't have those gifts. Keep the track on the rails, but isn't going to give you anything special. And then Zayd Lott is the freshman that Syracuse likes a lot. And, you have to see how quickly he'll come along. But you've sort of got one guy in each of those buckets in terms of high-level tools, game manager, and high ceiling. So I like how they've sort of distributed, with those 3 archetypes, the 3 to 5 spots.
You touched on it briefly, Javon. Nelson is intriguing. At one point, he was a 5-star guy, number 1 quarterback, according to ESPN, 247 Sports, all the high rankings. Got beat out at USC by Miller Moss, if I'm not mistaken, and just hasn't been able to stick the landing as QB1. But as the portal allows, the 4th time is the charm. He does share a agency with Fran Brown, which we've heard a couple of times now with players, Calvin Russell, also in that category. He comes in with some intrigue, right? But he just hasn't had the production to back it up. I mean, if you can't stick at UTEP as the starter, I'm not completely dismissing you, but it feels like that's going to be an uphill battle to stick as the starter at Syracuse.
All I can say is I guess Syracuse is hoping the college football 26 video game has it right on Malachi Nelson. Because in every dynasty mode you play, that kid enters the portal after the season and turns into like an 86 overall with all the speed and all the arm strength in the world for the 26 season. So maybe you're hoping the game's got it right and he's in that conversation. But until then, you're going to have people out there saying, oh, man, this is Fran throwing network a bone and giving their guy a place to play in 2026. Do I fully ascribe to that belief? I don't think so, because I think Malachi Nelson is a guy who wants to play. So if he felt he had a chance to start somewhere else, he would have taken it. So there's definitely something there on this one in terms of tools and Nixon and Ryan thinking they can fix this guy. And you just think about the quarterbacks that Sean Ryan has been around, right, Brent? Matthew Stafford, Deshaun Watson, Eli Manning. These are guys who were great prospects in college and had great ability in the National Football League. So if there's anyone who's seen it and knows what it takes to be that, it is Sean Ryan. And maybe he can work his magic on Malachi Nelson. Because clearly, everyone thought he was hot stuff in high school. Like you said, he's got the physical tools. But coaching matters. Coaching is everything. So we'll see if Ryan is the right guy to unlock him. Can he be the Kevin O'Connell and Clint Kubiak to Malachi Nelson's Sam Darnold?
You're talking about future Buffalo Bills head coach Clint Kubiak there. There you go.
No. Future Baltimore Ravens head coach.
Oh, we're in competition
Clint
for that,
Kubiak.
I see.
Yeah.
I'm still salty about this McDermott thing, so just don't let me get going on that. But you said the name. He's my guy. All right. So, Chris, let me turn to you. We spent a lot of time on the quarterbacks, notably so because of how aggressive they were, and no matter what, they have upped the production and experience in that room. What were some of the other key pickups you think throughout this portal session for Syracuse that really stood out to you?
Two guys that I think I like the linebacker from Toledo, Chris D'Apollonia, that they got. He's a pass coverage linebacker, which is something they really didn't have last year. Gary Bryant was one of the worst in the ACC in pass coverage per PFF. Chris D'Apollonia was fourth best in the MAC in pass coverage, according to PFF. And I think if you watched the national title game last night, you saw a team that played a lot of coverage and played exceptional coverage. So you can sort of see how that could be a useful tool for Syracuse. At bare minimum, he allows them the option of playing coverage rather than sort of a blitzing linebacker situation. So he makes them more versatile at linebacker at worst. Keyshawn Johnson, to me, is the other guy that's really, really interesting. We've talked about their pass rush needing to get better. He had 13 and a half sacks at Tennessee Martin. Now, Tennessee Martin is an FCS school. We have no idea how that production is going to translate to the Power 4 level. And they are banking on it, translating. So that will be to me, that's a really, really interesting thing to look for. And it sort of typifies Syracuse's approach in the portal to me. They are not at a place financially where they are taking proven guys from the Power 4 level. Everybody is a little bit of a boom or bust prospect. It's either guys that haven't played at the Power 4, but were elite prospects, or guys that have produced at a lower level. So not the easiest way to win, but it's sort of we've talked about it. It's a money ball strategy to the portal.
And if you're going to get an FCS guy, I'll take an FCS All-American. And you mentioned the numbers, 13 and a half sacks, 20 TFLs. How does that translate to the upper level? I'd like to see, because they needed help at that position for sure. Javon, what are a couple names that really popped to you?
Yeah, I would, just to touch on Johnson real quick, I would not be shocked if he turns out to be better for Syracuse than Tumisi Adelaide, the other defensive end transfer from UNLV. When it comes to pass rush, if you can get to the quarterback, you can get to the quarterback. And he's not some super strong guy. He's a guy that relies on speed and technique. That can elevate as you go up in higher levels of football. We've seen it in the NFL. Guys go from, JUCO to FCS to Pro Bowl in the NFL. I wouldn't be shocked if Johnson is the better of the two between him and Adelaide. But I've got some intrigue here. I'm start off with Jartavius Flournoy, who, to me, I wouldn't be shocked if he's like a quiet guy this season, but moving forward, the versatility he gives them, he's going to grow into the size of a nose tackle, but he's also got the skill of a 3 technique. So he's going to provide them some versatility in some interior pass rush moving forward. Led Georgia State last year in sacks. Granted, it was only 3 sacks, which tells you how bad that Panthers defense was. But I think that kid's got some potential to him. I look at Dylan Fontes. This one is personal to me. I keep close tabs on Maryland football, and I can tell you right now, the Terps' problem for the last, 6 years has not been talent. It has been coaching. More times than not, if you play at Maryland right now, you can play some pretty good football. It's about if your team is being coached properly. So I look at Dylan Fontes, who has spent time outside, but is now listed at what, 6'6", 292.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to play inside. If you've got that experience on the end of getting home and you're moving that inside, and let's just say he's one of those guys who kept his skill and his footwork and fluidity from his days out there, because I know some dudes that were thin back in the day, got big and still move like they're thin. If he's got that fortune to him, I'd say look out there. But then the last one for me is Matt Outton, the Penn State transfer. That was a very coveted guy in the state of Virginia when he was coming out. And I'm very interested to see how he and Amari Duff interact with each other, because Amari Duff's coming out game in high school was against Matt Outton. He played both ways in that game, had a great day on offense, and made it a little difficult for Outton to catch the ball on defense. So I'm very interested to see how that relationship plays out. I'm sure it's water under the bridge, but it'll be fun watching them compete for a spot on the depth chart for the next 2 or 3 years.
And just to go back to Fontes for a second, Brooklyn kid, always good to bring the New York guys back in here. And Outton was very high on Syracuse's radar through his recruiting process. He fits more into the potential over production category just because he's young and didn't get on the field a lot, but they really wanted him. And that's a wide receiver room we're going to talk about here coming up here that could use all the talent it could get, having lost their top 7 receivers. That was a position that got hit hard in the portal in the outgoing categories we'll talk about. I'll just add a couple names to the intriguing list. And correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm still getting my pronunciations down. Javon Johnson, LSU. Am I saying that correctly? The running back. 3rd string guy. He's one of the all-time leading passers in the history of high school football in Louisiana. Ends up at LSU as a running back, so there's some trick play potential there. Syracuse, of course, had to replace Yassine Willis and Will Nixon. Willis, who transferred to Kansas, and Nixon, who, despite getting another year of eligibility, is going to give it a go in the NFL draft. Ahmad Miller last year, he fits in the production category that you hope can elevate from Jackson State, had over 1,000 yards last season, averaged about 6.5 yards per carry. So you've got an interesting back and forth there at running back. And I'm intrigued by Nasir Ward, the corner that they got from Western Kentucky, because that's a position where you have, of course, Demetrius Samuel and Chris Peel coming back. His tackling seems to need work. You guys did a good job reporting that out. And, you look at PFF numbers and other things, but that adds a little, again, you go up and down the list here, and I'm seeing more production than potential. I'm seeing guys that have been on the field, and they're trying to just get that to elevate. And Chris noted he had the budget concerns, and they are trying to moneyball this thing a little bit. I just see that meme, right, of who's that, Jonah Hill? Billy, this is Nasir Ward, and this is the good things about him, but here's the flaw, right? But that's everybody you pick up in the portal. So those are the intriguing guys that they got. Where did they fall short, maybe? And Javon, I'll start with you on this. What's a position or two, or just overall, where you look at this and you're like, maybe they didn't fill in the holes where they needed to?
So I've got 2 that kind of shocked me more than anything. So the first thing, I thought they'd get one more defensive end. I thought they'd go get Neo Avery out of Maryland. That's Gary Bryant's cousin, played with Dylan Fontes for the last few years. I thought they'd try to get one more body in that room, and his name just made sense just off of relationships. But I think the one all 3 of us are going to agree with, offensive line. One addition on the line. I guess you've got some real faith in your guys that you've got coming back. We will see what Travion Mack looks like this year. We will see what Nicole Bertrand looks like this year. I will say there are people out there who think that Nicole Bertrand is pretty good. When I say people, this is the same person who thought Darryl Gill could go get paid by an SEC school this offseason. That brother was correct. So we'll see if he's right on Nicole Bertrand. We know they like Matt Hahn. They like Skylar Harvey, Baltimore kid out of Archbishop Curley. So we'll see if this faith is correct and if replacing Dale Williams was the jolt that unit needed for all of their guys to improve. They're not small on the line, so you've got your big people beat little people up thing. But Chris, as you and I have said multiple times, and Brent, we've said it on the pod, your big guys have to be able to move also. So we're going to see what that development has looked like this spring in fall camp, because adding one person to that group, which struggled last year, that is a big roll of the dice and a huge sign of confidence in that unit. And that could be the difference between a 10-win season and a 4 to 6 win season.
They added Juan Castillo at the offensive line coach position after Fran Brown made some changes there. So, Chris, I mean, we love Dale Williams. We're going to miss our guy. You know, he was on the all-interview team. Castillo's been around. He's got a lot of experience. He's been at the National Football League level, and Fran Brown praised him as one of the better offensive line coaches in the country. He better be, because you're rolling the dice with and there's a lot of bodies in that room. They have 19, I believe, on the roster, give or take 1 or 2 positions here, and they're hoping that somewhere, and Javon noted a few of the names here, Chris, but they're hoping that it's a chicken or the egg thing. They brought in a lot of quarterbacks, but you need an offensive line. And there's a lot of new faces in the wide receiver room, as we'll touch on here shortly. So there's a lot that has to come together rather quickly here, but it all comes back in the trenches.
Yeah, and the guy they brought in, Olu Wafuntu Akinshilo, hopefully I'm close.
Sounds like you nailed it to me.
Chris, I'm going to take my hat off to you for that.
One take.
I've got a joke for that. That's a good one, Chris. Good job. Yeah,
Good job out of you.
You know, he played 61 snaps last year for UCLA. So it's not even like they brought in like an anchor that they know what they're getting. The 4 guys that played a lot last year that they're bringing back, none of them were better than average in the ACC last season. So you really are placing a heavy bet that, the guys you've brought in have the raw material, and that Juan Castillo is going to be the molder of the clay here, and that he's going to do a great job. The 2 coaches that have the most pressure next year, to me, clearly Juan Castillo and then Vince Karras, the defensive coordinator. Because I don't love that they didn't bring in more safety help either. I was surprised that they did not bring in, Cornell Perry was good last year. Brahim Long was okay. But I'm surprised that they didn't bring in at least one more maybe proven guy at safety. And wide receiver is fascinating to me. Like, they could be great or they could be terrible.
Let's get on that in a second here. But one of the safeties they did bring in he's from Toledo, of course, with Vince Karras, now the defensive coordinator, but he's more noted as a baseball player than a football player. That is definitely a potential project pick as opposed to in the production category. Yeah, let's hit the receivers here, because this is intriguing. 7 top receivers gone. Darrell Gill Jr., Jonte Cook notably, go to Ole Miss. Jalen Hornsby goes to Purdue. Receivers scattered everywhere, right? Now, you knew you were bringing in Calvin Russell. You brought up Amari Go. So the receivers that they brought in, we touched on one, Matt Outen from Penn State. They brought in Cole Weaver, big target. I've seen him listed at anywhere from 6'3" to 6'5". We'll give him the 6'5" and hope that's the size he is. Miami of Ohio.
He's 6'5" or not.
Say that again, Javon.
When he stands next to me, we'll know if he's 6'5" or not.
There you go. See, we've got our own measurement here with my guy, Javon. That's a good point. Very productive at Miami, Ohio. Elijah Moore, 6'4", 204. Great high school pedigree. One of those Florida State guys that comes in. That's a big target, and you would put him more in the potential category at this point because we just haven't seen the production. But, Chris, I'll start with you. That wide receiver room – a lot of new faces in there. A lot of hello, my name is tags in there. Number one recruit you've had in the past 25 years, who's also on the basketball team right now. But, whoa, boy, there is a lot of reps and a lot of getting to know you that's going to have to be done between all the new quarterbacks and wide receivers on that roster.
Yeah. If you want to put the positive spin on it, Boobie Johnson flashed nicely last year. Darian Williams sort of had moments. They bring in 2 really high level high school prospects or former high school prospects in Elijah Moore and help me out, guys.
Matt Outen.
Matt Outen? Yeah.
Outen's the other name. And then Calvin Russell and Amari Go or Guff. That's a lot of potential. It's a lot of highly ranked recruits. We've seen from Miami and Ohio State that highly ranked recruits can produce immediately. Malachi Tony, Jeremiah Smith. Wide receiver is a position where those young guys can succeed, but you have like no proven production. You have no proven ability to get through a season at any of the 3 wide receiver positions. Like I'm fascinated. Like I really have no idea what to expect out of that group.
And they're pretty high on Zamondre Merriweather, who's a junior college transfer as well.
Yep.
Do we know what the deal is with Amari Hatcher? I think he's going to apply for another year, right? Because he had an injury situation. I don't know if he's officially on the roster or not. Is that still up in the air, or what's the latest on that?
His agent told me that he is applying for a medical hardship waiver. Gotcha. He tried to return last year, but when he came back, his knee, he tore a couple ligaments in it, and his knee wasn't 100%, so they shut him down. They don't think that there will be any major issues with getting the hardship waiver, and if he gets it, he expects to return to Syracuse. Now that is Syracuse's choice, so we don't necessarily know how Fran feels about it yet. We'll find out when they release a roster. But Amari's expectation is certainly that he'll be back, next year.
There is some.
So you're right. He is, I suppose, some proven production at Syracuse.
Yeah.
Although it was 2 years ago and an injury ago.
Always intriguing, the portal guys. Darian Mensah is being sued by Duke right now to stay at Duke because everybody thinks he's heading to the runner-up Miami Hurricanes, who lost in the national championship game to Indiana. It's kind of the wild, wild west. It reminds me of that great scene from Field of Dreams when you have Terrence Mann and Ray Kinsella. Ray Kinsella played by Kevin Costner and Terrence Mann played by James Earl Jones. And Ray Kinsella goes to find him in Boston, and he's trying to convince him to go on this road trip. But at one point, Terrence Mann's trying to get him out of his apartment, and he's coming at him with a crowbar, and he's like, "Oh, rules? There are no rules here." Right? That is the world we live in. Like, what are the rules? I don't know the rules. Do they even matter? Right? So we've had some wild stuff out there. Syracuse had a commitment from South Carolina tight end Michael Smith until they didn't, because he ends up at Ole Miss. Right? So I don't know what we're missing there or not, because he was here for 5 minutes. They did bring in another tight end from the portal, Noah Myers, another Western Kentucky guy on the roster here. So, hey, we hardly knew you, Michael Smith, but he ends up at Ole Miss with, I don't think you could say a couple of his former Syracuse teammates, because they technically weren't on the roster together, but there's 3 people that Syracuse maybe thought they would have, but are now on the Ole Miss roster. So there you go. I don't know what happened there, but he was here for a bit and then he wasn't.
If you're an SU fan, you should feel, I know I'm being Mr. Brightside here, but shouldn't you feel happy about that? Like, Ole Miss just had the best season in program history. I think Pete Golding showed us this month the Rebels are going to be just fine without Lane Kiffin. And that coaching staff looked at those 3 and said, we like them so much that we are going to get them. Shouldn't that be like a tip of the cap to Syracuse? Like, hey, you're doing something right when it comes to finding and developing these wide receivers, because the best team in the SEC wants your guys. I think that's a moral win for Syracuse at least. I don't know.
I like what you're doing here, but of course the answer would be no. You got to keep them, right? You don't want to develop. You don't want to be the AAA for the SEC, right? I think that's ultimately the answer, but that is just the challenge that Syracuse has, to lock down these guys that pop either as transfers coming in Jonte Cook's case, or Daryl Gill was here for a while and gets to a point where he could look. You need continuity in that room, and that's what I'm concerned about. I understand we're in the portal era and everybody's bringing in a whole lot of new players, but you need some kind of continuity, some kind of leadership, and that's what Daryl Gill would have brought back. So that's the one. There's a question right there. Who's the one guy Syracuse lost where you're like, man, you can't lose that guy? I would probably say him, because there were a lot of names you're like, all right, good luck. We'll see if you pick up elsewhere. But Gill was right up there at the top of my list. I'm like, no, you got to do everything you can to get him back. And I'm not saying they didn't. He ultimately made his choice, but that's the one that really, I think, is going to hurt the most.
in Gill's situation, I'm going to rank him number one. When I spoke to Daryl Gill towards the end of the season, he said he was coming back. You can count on seeing 15 and orange next season. I know everyone is quick to, bag on these kids for those answers and then leaving. I am here to tell you all, at that point in time, he actually believed that 2,000% that he was going to be back at Syracuse. However, this is a business. And once the right people get a hold of you and let you know what they can get for you in the free marketplace, sometimes you have a decision to make, and sometimes too much money is just too much to walk away from. I remember talking to some friends on Friday, like, hey, Sam Levitt and Dylan Raiola are not going to Coral Gables next year. Someone's losing their starter before 11:59 p.m. tonight. And that guy ended up being Darian Mensah. That is what happens in college football right now. And that is what happened with Daryl Gill. He was completely intent on returning to Syracuse, to my understanding, until he got that one phone call of, hey, Daryl, my name is XXX, and I do this for a living, and I am telling you, you can end up potentially as a day 3 pick somewhere and get paid XXX amount of money by this school, that school, and the other school.
Chris, would you put Gill at the top of the list? I think people are surprised I didn't see Yassine Willis as the reigning president of the Yassine Willis fan club here. But look,
I actually think they got better at running back. I think they got better at
running backs are replaceable. They are replaceable. He had a couple of concussions. He was not a pass catcher that Syracuse needs, which both running backs that they brought in seem to be better in that category. And Javon brought it up, Chris. It's a business, and it appears Kansas had a better business offer for Yassine than Syracuse did, and that's where he went, and we will miss him. But I think you're right. I think they did upgrade in that room. But would you put Gill as the biggest loss, or do you have anybody else in mind?
No, I'd put Gill as the biggest loss. And to me, like, he's really the only guy that like, I don't think is, like, replaceable in sort of like a 1-for-1 thing. Like, I know Jonte Cook is good. But I liked what I saw from Boobie Johnson. And I think some of the unproven wide receivers that can play the slot can do a nice job there. But Gill was sort of like, he had 2 years of production. We saw with Kyle McCord that he could be good on those contested back shoulder throws. We saw from the You Got Mossed highlight that he could go up and get it. Like, that is a difficult to replace skill set. Not that they're doomed, but like he's the one guy that I'm like, oh, like that hurts. Everybody else, Yasin, I think, was replaceable by the 2 guys they brought in. Jonte Cook, I think, is replaceable. Gill's the one guy who I think stings.
Guys, let's spend a little time with our Syracuse Sports Insiders. And as you know, being a Syracuse Sports Insider, but in case you don't, gives you direct text message access to me anytime with your questions, comments, thoughts, opinions. Always fun to watch games with our Syracuse Sports Insiders and see the roller coaster of emotions that come in here. And it's just a running dialogue between you and me with everything on your mind when it comes to Syracuse sports. It's just $3.99 a month to be a Syracuse Sports Insider. You could try it free for 2 weeks, and all the info right there on your screen on how you can join today. And it gives you exclusive voice on this podcast, including our friend Nick in Vegas, who says everybody seems to question the O-line and the lack of activity within the portal, but they're entering spring ball with 19 players in the room, 3 returning starters in Mac, Cruz, and Byron Washington, of course. And he goes on to say this: Fran has said he thinks that Castillo is the best offensive line coach in the country. He's been given the one thing you can't teach, and that's size, and is interested to see what he can get out of those guys. I mean, we brought it up earlier. They're all in. Their chips are on the table with the people they have in the room, the new coach, the size that Nick noted there, and he did the math for us there. Just, you've got 19 players in the room, 3 returning starters. You're trying to find 3 spots with 7 or 8 guys, and you just hope that the math is on your side there, especially when they step on the scale as well, and how big they are and how strong they are. Rob W says, then they do need a center, which do we think that's Matthew Hahn at this point? Does he have the edge to take that spot? There's nobody else, it seems, that is going to make a run at that thing. But that's a big spot to fill from Austin Collins last year.
Yeah, it could be Hahn. It could be Khalil Stewart. Joe Cruz was sort of the emergency guy late in the year, so he'd have a full offseason with snapping. But it's a big spot on the offensive line.
Can I say this?
Yeah, go ahead.
When it comes to you're going to have a new center this year and all of these new receivers, whoever is the most available quarterback this offseason is going to have a real leg up in the chemistry department, which is going to mean a lot.
That's a great point. Rob W. says, hard to tell before they play a snap for Syracuse, but at the moment, I'm feeling kind of like a C- grade on the portal overall. Some nice ads at defensive end, but no help at safety or offensive line. From Nathan, who says, happy with what they did at quarterback. Love the DC hire. That's Vince Karras, of course, from Toledo, but wonder if we got enough guys that fit his system. I'm actually bullish on the linebackers being able to learn the coverage responsibilities, which is Christy Apollonia, who they brought in. They certainly need more guys that can do that.
And Delorier was not bad. He wasn't
Right.
good, but he wasn't bad either.
Delorier is a freshman All-American. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt on a number of things. But we should probably spend a moment on that guy. It's our first chance to really dig into this. Vince Karras, by all accounts, seemed like an excellent hire. Top 5 defense last year. Has the accolades. He was desired, if you will, out there in the portal. Nebraska wanted him. There's some other schools that were knocking on his door. This seemed to be a big ad for Syracuse at defensive coordinator, a much-needed position with how things played out with Elijah Robinson.
And a little bit more, I like it. It also fits this trend where we're just like, hey, good football coaches are good football coaches. Like Kurt Signetti, I don't care if he didn't coach Power 4 football. Like that dude's a good football coach. We're going to bring in a good football coach. You look at all the Mount Union coaches that have sort of come through there that have been successful. Nick Sirianni, Matt Campbell, good football coaches. We're respecting that regardless of the level. So I we'll see how Vince Karras translates, but I like that line of thinking versus just bringing in a retread, that hasn't gotten it done before. Let's give somebody a chance that has been really good at the lower level.
Go through a few more of our insider comments here. Oh, go ahead, Javon. Then I'm going to bang out a few more of these comments here. Yep.
On Karras, think about it like this. The MAC is not one of the better G5 conferences in the country. But Toledo was, without a doubt, for the last 3, 4, 5 years, the best defense in the group of 5, period. If you can bring that over to Syracuse at 49 years old, Vince Karras is going to have a shot to be a head coach sooner than later, if that translates. So this could go down as one of Fran's best hires of however long his career ends up being.
Greg says this guys didn't address the offensive line. Not sure if bringing in 1 linebacker and 2 safeties was enough, and stunned at the number of receivers that are tying up scholarships. From Will, who says, I give it a 3 out of 10. As always, happy to be proven idiotic, but for now, it appears they lost a lot without replacing what they lost with equal value. Mark C notes
true.
this.
I don't think that's true. I think they got a little better.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I think they got a little bit better.
Okay.
I wouldn't give them an A, but I think the roster got better. I think a lot of the players they lost were sort of bottom of the roster, weren't giving you a lot. And I think they brought in a lot of good players, and then they lost, a really good one in Gill.
Let me throw this to you, Javon. Did people get too hung up in the Power 4 thing? Because they tried that. They brought in some Power 4 guys last year, notably Ricky Collins. Didn't work. A couple other Power 4 guys. Zach Rice didn't get on the field or didn't live up to the Power 4 level on the field. They were potential guys, right? So I liked the approach of just give me productive football players and I'll worry about trying to elevate them to the next level. I think that was the right approach generally overall.
Power 4 rejects aren't always the way to go. My 2 examples are 2 quarterbacks that I've covered. DeJuan Mathis transferred to Temple from Georgia, and that was the worst quarterbacking I've seen with my own eyes. Probably second place in that category was Ricky Collins transferring from Syracuse from LSU. It's not always the way to go. Fran knows that. Fran was part of a staff that had the most NFL players of any Group of 5 program in the country at the time. So I think there's one thing I know about Fran Brown. He understands good football players, and that production can come from anywhere. There's a such thing as an underrated and overlooked recruit. What school you go to, I'm not going to say means nothing, but it isn't everything. If you are good enough, someone's going to find you.
I agree.
And Fran Brown subscribes to that belief. If you're good enough, I'm going to find you and I'm going to bring you to Syracuse. So it should not be, hey, let's just go look at who was the highest rated, guys who didn't work out at the Power 4 level and then bring them to Syracuse and see if you can get something from them. No. Who produced somewhere? Who has the intangibles somewhere? Who has, that is just one coach away from becoming something, and go get them.
And I get it's a copycat world, but you just got to look at Signetti. Now, he brought a lot of these guys from somewhere he coached them, which is easier to do. But the emphasis he had in the past couple of years was experience, age, production. He kind of coined that. I shouldn't say coined that phrase, but said it a lot. Production over potential. Production over potential. And this is the message I had continually for our Syracuse Sports Insiders that were texting, and I think right to question it in a way like there's not enough Power 4 guys. And I'm like, you just got to get that out of your head. Production over potential. Now, Mark C. disagrees a bit here when he says, overall, I'm pretty underwhelmed. Other than the Maryland defensive tackle, I don't see much production or experience at the P4 level. No McCord, Fidel Diggs, Angeli, or even a David Reese type in this class. And he notes this, that he asked Fran at the Myers Creek radio show what the process was generally for evaluating potential portal targets when there's no pre-existing relationship or significant P4 level video to review. And he says he turned it into a defense of Ricky Collins. So I never got an answer. So I'll have to follow up on that for you, Mark. But Javon.
With all due respect, what did David Reese do last year?
Another P4 guy that didn't quite probably bring to the table what he needed to.
Yeah. 8th year and had known pretty much nothing but Power 4 ball. What did that get you last season? Fidel Diggs was a lovable guy and productive, but you can find another Fidel Diggs and a James Madison. So that's got to... Yeah, that thought process has to stop. The team that just won the national championship last night, only 3 guys on that roster were 4-star recruits in high school. Everyone else was worse.
But they brought in a starting quarterback from Cal and a starting offensive lineman from Notre Dame.
Hold on, what is Cal football these days?
It's a Power 4 team.
Are you checking for Cal on your TV guide on Saturday night, Chris Carlson?
I am saying that if Syracuse, the last comment, I agree with it. Like if Syracuse has true national championship aspirations, true ACC title aspirations, if you think that is where this program is going, I understand the complaint that, hey, we're not bringing any proven Power 4 guys. But, I'm also not surprised.
If you're not going to, the next thing on the list is what they did. Production, right? And they did that. By the way, answer your question, Javon. 27 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks for David Reese last year. You're probably expecting a little bit more than that from an 8th-year guy.
There are no guarantees. To your point, Javon, there are no guarantees at any level.
Yeah,
that's very true.
One more from our insiders, guys. We're gone for a while here, and I appreciate you hanging this long, especially those of you that have been watching and will be listening in the future here. Remember to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube to get the latest from Syracuse Sports. But we had someone check in from Florida here that I wanted to hear what he had to say.
Hey, Brett, rock and run in Florida. Shout out to Javon and Chris. Hey, want to get you guys' opinion on something here. I've been listening to a lot of the Syracuse sports, let's say radios and podcasts, and not one really has mentioned that Fran Brown did anything to enhance the defensive line. Yeah, we got a couple of experienced edge rushers and Keyshawn Johnson and the kid from UNLV and a couple maybe D tackles, but they said they're not rated that high. But I wanted to get your opinion on it and see where we're heading on the D part of it. But where we did hit the home run on, as far as I'm concerned, is our defensive coordinator, Karras. I think we got a real winner there. He's definitely a DC. I'll tell you one thing, and I'll say it again. Eli Robb was not a defensive coordinator, and that just proves he just couldn't win. But anyway.
Thank you, Rock and Ron, as always. And there's another production over potential, by the way. Robinson had not been a defensive coordinator, but Vince Karras certainly has the production there. But we did touch on this a little bit, guys, but just to answer Ron's question about did they do enough on that defensive line? I mean, you win games in the trenches. It's the old cliche. Did they do enough by and large to upgrade what was certainly a position of need in the portal?
I think
you go ahead, Javon. Sorry.
I think Ron kind of answered his own question. You got better coaches than you had last year, in my opinion. Nick Williams might be a loss, apparently. When I look at his track record, I see good letters of recommendation, but I'm not seeing where it's like, oh, he got this guy and turned this guy into this, that, and the third, and losing him is just such a crime, right? But I do see a guy in Elijah Robinson who, let's not watch Syracuse football on Saturdays and see Elijah Robinson, and then I watch Ravens football on Sunday and see Zach Orr. 2 first-time defensive coordinators who just were not ready for the job yet. We don't have that issue now. And I just don't think it can get worse from last year. And I like the we've just been saying production over potential this whole show. But I do like the potential of the guys they added, both inside and outside on the defensive line. So I think that unit has upgraded and will show that this season. And a lot of that has to do with they're just going to be coached better. Same thing with the linebackers. I'm going to be shocked if Gary Bryant is better this year than he was last year. Not because of experience, but Vince Karras is going to be a better linebackers coach than Robert Wright was. And I remember the first practice I went to with you gentlemen. I told you, I'm not sure about this Wright guy. So I think just coaching is going to help that whole defense overall.
I think, I have the same concerns Rock and Ron does in terms of if they did enough. I do think the D tackles, they got guys that play the run. Like you look at their PFF grades and they are run stoppers. So they might not be flashy, but they sort of serve a purpose. So it does seem like at least Vince Karras knows what he wants out of that position and is acquiring sort of the skill sets he needs. Again, maybe a reason to think that maybe the sum of the parts can be greater than the individuals there.
Yeah, and you look at it. Oh, go ahead.
The last thing I would add, let's also remember, Rashard Perry comes back this year.
Yep.
And that guy, I've been told, hey, this season could be his last in an orange jersey because he could go somewhere and get paid like the Darryl Gill just did. That is a belief with Rashard Perry. So that line is going to be better this year.
Some of the names that we mentioned don't emerge at pass rusher. You've got Jamie Tremble back there who had some flashes in that department last year. Cameron Wilson is a highly touted freshman, but Chris, you've been down there. You've talked to him. He's got to get bigger. He's just not an impact guy.
But it's hard as a freshman on the line.
And that's going to be our first peak in spring balls. Who of all these freshmen, this was a focus on the portal, eventually we'll turn our attention to the freshmen, and Calvin Russell's the obvious answer to this, but who of that huge crop of players can help you right away? Who's the other Demetrius Samuel or Antoine Delorier out of that group? But we'll have to save that for another time, gentlemen. We appreciate everybody that hung with us here. I appreciate your time, and great job in the portal, guys. It was nonstop. It was a sprint for about 2 weeks there, and hope you guys enjoyed our coverage. It's all still up there, of course, at syracuse.com. We should have a schedule by the end of the month, all lined up. Typically, that's when the ACC puts that out by the end of January. So we'll certainly react to that when it comes out, and it'll be spring ball before you know it. But for now, this transfer portal review session is over. For Chris Carlson, for Javon Edmonds, I'm Brent Axe. Thanks to our Syracuse Sports Insiders. Again, please subscribe on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Keep watching our Syracuse basketball post-game shows. Next one will be very late Wednesday night after the Orange take on Virginia Tech in hoops as they continue their quest to see if they're an NCAA tournament-worthy team. But that's a conversation for... Oh, and do you hear that knocking, guys? You know what that is? That's lacrosse season knocking on the door. So we'll be talking about that on the pod as well. But for now, thanks for hanging with us. This has been a live edition of Syracuse Sports, and we'll talk to you next time.